The courtroom smelled of polished wood and old secrets, the kind that had been whispered for decades but never spoken aloud, and somewhere in the back row a mother clutched a creased handkerchief as if it were her final tether to hope. The bailiff called the session to order, his voice slicing through the murmurs, and all eyes turned to the defendant, a boy, no more than 17, with wrists too thin for the handcuffs and eyes too tired for his age. The headline had already painted him guilty. "This boy has no defense," it read, as if destiny had already been carved against him. The prosecutor strutted forward with the confidence of a man who had never lost a battle, smiling at the jury as if they were old friends. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, pacing slowly, letting every word drip with certainty, "you will find that this case is not about complexity. It is not about circumstance. It is simply about right and wrong. And this boy," he pointed sharply, like an archer aiming at his target, "is wrong." Soft laughter rippled through the courtroom. The judge, an old man with silver eyebrows, leaned back and smirked as if the outcome were already amusing. "Does the defendant have counsel?" he asked, though he knew the answer. The boy swallowed hard and shook his head. "No, sir." "No defense," the judge repeated, raising a brow. "Then we may as well conclude," but before he could finish, the door of the courtroom swung open with a metallic echo. Heads turned simultaneously, necks snapping like startled birds, and in walked a girl not much older than the boy, clutching a folder thick with papers. Her clothes were simple, worn, and slightly oversized as though borrowed, but her expression carried a fire no courtroom could extinguish. "He does now," she said, stepping forward. The judge blinked, half mocking. "And you are?" "His defense." The gallery broke into soft chuckles, even the prosecutor couldn't resist smirking. "This is a courtroom, not a school debate," he chided, voice dripping with patronizing amusement. "You can't sit," the judge interrupted. "Let's see what the girl has to say. We could use some entertainment." His laughter filled the chamber, and for a moment the boy's eyes fell to the floor in humiliation. But the girl didn't flinch. She opened the folder and slid forward a photograph, not of a crime scene, not of violence, but of a half-burned family home, crumbling walls, and a charred window frame. "Before you judge him," she began, voice steady, "you should know what he was defending." Silence began to settle in patches, like ash floating wildly before sinking. "Because this boy didn't steal for greed. He didn't run for thrill. He didn't hide for guilt. He did it to survive." She told the story of a night nobody had mentioned in the news, the night flames swallowed the boy's house, trapping his sick father inside, a man too frail to stand alone. She showed the hospital bills, numbers that climbed higher than mountains, and the debt collectors who circled like wolves. She showed the job applications rejected because no one wanted to hire a 16-year-old burdened with responsibility. "He sold stolen watch parts," the prosecutor spat, as if that sentence alone defined the entire universe. "He sold hope," she corrected, "in pieces small enough to pay for insulin." The judge's smile faded. The gallery murmured. The mother in the back row pressed her handkerchief to her mouth, choking back sound. The prosecutor lunged for control, pounding his fist lightly on the podium. "The law does not change for struggle," he barked. "If we pity every sad story, we destroy accountability." The girl stepped closer, lifting her chin. "Accountability without humanity is cruelty." The words hit the room like thunder, and the judge leaned forward as if awakened from a comfortable slumber. The prosecutor bit his tongue, recalibrating strategy. He called witnesses meant to dismantle the narrative, shop owners, security staff, neighbors who never looked deep enough to see the truth. But every attack seemed to sharpen the girl's resolve. She cross-examined with questions that peeled back layers of society nobody wanted to confront: poverty, abandonment, debt, illness, and the cruel architecture of survival. At one point the judge tapped his gavel, not in anger, but in discomfort. "Proceed," he muttered, as though the truth itself were inconvenient. And through it all the boy sat silently, shoulders hunched, the weight of the world on bones too slender for such burden, wondering if anyone would ever believe the life he never asked for. The prosecutor smirked again. Intent, ladies and gentlemen, he reminded, pacing toward the jury, is the heart of guilt. Exactly, the girl interjected softly, and his intent was to save his father's life. She pulled out a final document, the medical chart stamped with prognosis in letters no child should have to read. Without treatment, patient may not survive the year. The courtroom fell silent. Not just quiet, silent in the way storms fall silent just before tearing a roof from its foundation. The judge stared at the boy, then at the girl, then at the papers stacked like unraveling confessions. For the first time, amusement drained from his face. But the prosecutor would not surrender the battlefield so easily. His pride had been carved over years of unbroken victories, and this case, this boy, was meant to be just another trophy polished by ego. He flicked through his papers as though searching for an angle with sharper teeth. Sentiment, he finally declared, waving the medical chart in the air, is not defense. Laws exist because feelings are fickle. If we excuse crime for sympathy, we invite chaos into the streets. He turned to the jury, urging their agreement with the mannerisms of a conductor cueing an orchestra. And for a moment it worked, heads nodded, hands folded, and the room leaned toward justice stripped of mercy. The girl breathed in slowly, not shaken but steady as an anchor in a storm. Chaos, she replied, is what happens when a society ignores suffering so long it boils over into desperation. She took one step toward the jury, not confrontational but brave enough to be seen. Tell me, what would you do if your parents were dying and every door you knocked on stayed shut? Would you let them fade away quietly so that the world could keep its rules polished and untarnished? Or would you fight with whatever scraps you had? A murmur rippled across the benches, not loud, but unmistakably human. The judge narrowed his eyes as if he were weighing truth against order, and the scales inside him were beginning to tremble. Meanwhile, the boy sat frozen, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles paled to ghostly white. His memories flickered across his face like old film reels, watching his father cough blood into a rag, watching the landlord tape an eviction notice to their door, watching creditors count down days he didn't have. The girl continued, her voice unshaken.